Imagine a defendant, shielded by a plea deal, hoping for leniency. But then a judge, armed with every detail of their deception, delivers a powerful, scathing, and utterly unforgettable rebuke. This isn't just a sentencing, it's a complete dismantling of a defendant's self-serving narrative. Get ready, because what this judge says next will absolutely blow you away. Today we're diving into the intense sentencing of Alexis White in Gloucester County, Virginia. White, the defendant, had entered a plea agreement for voluntary manslaughter in the murder of Joseph Ryan, a deal that significantly reduced her exposure from potentially life in prison to a maximum of 10 years. This bargain was struck in exchange for her cooperation with the Commonwealth, which included testifying against co-defendant Anthony Banfield. The court is now poised to deliver its sentence, but it's immediately clear that the judge has some serious issues with White's actions and her perceived lack of remorse. The stage is set for a powerful confrontation between the court's unwavering pursuit of justice and a defendant hoping her plea deal will soften the blow.
To speak? All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. In this matter, the court does find that the manslaughter charge was a large benefit of your bargain for testifying, which was a huge bargain in a plea deal. You could have been facing life plus 3 years, and now the maximum I can sentence you to today is 10 years. That's clearly a trade for your cooperation with the Commonwealth and what the Commonwealth offered. And you accepted that along with the Commonwealth's recommendation for time served, which is not an agreement, and as you know, not binding on the court as we discussed at length at your plea.
This is a critical opening statement by the judge. She's immediately highlighting the elephant in the room, the defendant's plea deal. In Virginia, as in many jurisdictions, plea agreements for reduced charges, like manslaughter instead of murder, are often contingent on cooperation, such as testifying against a co-defendant. However, the judge is quick to clarify a crucial legal distinction. While the charge reduction was an agreement, the Commonwealth's sentencing recommendation of time served is not binding on the court. This is explicitly laid out in legal principles surrounding judicial discretion in sentencing, and it means the judge is not obligated to accept the prosecutor's suggestion. She is signaling right from the start that she intends to exercise her independent judgment, regardless of what was discussed previously about the plea.
In this case. Number two, you were more involved with the plan than you testified to. First off, there were numerous postings on social media platforms and text platforms looking for a target. Texting and speaking directly with Joseph Ryan, encouraging him to bring the knife, and ultimately through the phone conversation, getting his consent, knowing all along you were bringing him to his death.
This is where the judge begins her powerful enumeration of aggravating factors, essentially tearing down the defendant's narrative. Lack of remorse or empathy is a significant factor courts weigh heavily in sentencing, suggesting a failure to accept responsibility. But more damning is the revelation of deeper involvement, using social media to seek a target, actively luring Joseph Ryan, and even manipulating him into bringing a knife, all while knowing his ultimate fate. This directly contradicts any attempt by the defendant to portray herself as a passive participant, or merely groomed, pushing her actions well beyond the boundaries of simple voluntary manslaughter towards a more premeditated and calculated role in the crime. These specific actions speak to a high level of culpability and malice, even within the framework of a manslaughter plea. The judge continues to dismantle the defendant's claims of minimal involvement, detailing a shocking level of manipulation and active participation. Lying to Christine, orchestrating a fake plan involving the zoo, and most chillingly using a child as a pawn are profoundly aggravating. The judge highlights the defendant's deliberate actions, waiting for the victim and even summoning the actual killer, Mr. Banfield, to the scene. This directly refutes any claim of being an unwitting bystander or merely influenced, demonstrating a sustained, active, and calculating role in the murders. The judge's emphasis on "at any point you could have stopped this" underscores the defendant's agency and moral failing, highlighting her criminal responsibilities for failing to intervene in a rapidly escalating and ultimately fatal situation.
The heart. Number 7, watching as Mr. Banfield stabbed Christine over and over again. Number 8, waiting 15 minutes before recalling 911. Number 9, telling a fabricated story for over a year and a half, a story that depicted Joseph Ryan wrongly as a rapist and a murderer, an innocent man. And number 10, telling the child it was okay to call you mommy hours after the murder.
The final list of aggravating factors paints a picture of prolonged cruelty and deceit. Watching the brutal stabbing of Christine without intervening, then delaying calling 911 for 15 agonizing minutes, further solidifies the defendant's profound indifference to human suffering. The judge then exposes the defendant's sustained deception, fabricating a narrative for over a year and a half that falsely vilified the innocent victim, Joseph Ryan. This false accusation is an egregious attempt to shift blame and escape accountability, revealing a deep lack of remorse and a willingness to perpetuate lies. Finally, the chilling detail of telling the victim's child, hours after the murder, it was okay to call you mommy, demonstrates an unsettling psychological detachment and manipulative behavior, essentially trying to step into the role of the very mother she helped to eliminate. Each of these points in isolation is severe, but cumulatively they portray a defendant whose actions were deliberate, self-serving, and devoid of any humanity. The judge has meticulously laid out why any leniency, particularly time served, would be an affront to justice.
Your actions were deliberate, self-serving, and demonstrated a profound disregard for human life. So let's get it straight. You do not deserve anything other than incarceration and a life of reflection on what you have done to the victim and this family. May it weigh heavily on your soul. So today I'm sentencing you on a manslaughter charge because that's what's before me, and the facts of this case demonstrate an intentional and calculated level of violence that is the most serious manslaughter scenario that this court has ever seen. Therefore, I do sentence you to 10 years in the penitentiary, as required by Virginia Code 19.2-295.2. After you've completed your 10-year sentence, I will order an additional 2 years suspended, and you will be placed on probation pursuant to Virginia Code 19.2303. Since you have been convicted of a felony in Virginia, a sample of your DNA will also be drawn for the state police database.
Having thoroughly articulated her reasoning, the judge imposes the maximum sentence permissible for voluntary manslaughter, 10 years in the penitentiary. She explicitly cites Virginia Code 19.2-295.2 for the active term, and 19.2-303 for the additional 2 years suspended in probation term. Virginia law, specifically 19.2-298.01, outlines the use of discretionary sentencing guidelines, which judges review and consider but are not mandatory, allowing for departure when a written explanation is provided. The judge's powerful condemnation and maximum sentencing for Alexis White sent a clear message. In this harrowing case, Alexis White, who was sentenced here for the voluntary manslaughter of Joseph Ryan, was inextricably linked to another brutal murder. Subsequent to this sentencing, her co-defendant Anthony Banfield was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of both Joseph Ryan and Christine Peters. White's testimony, which was part of her plea deal, played a role in Banfield's conviction. Alexis White was sentenced to 10 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter, followed by 2 years of suspended sentence and probation, as detailed in this transcript. Justice, in its intricate and often painful path, eventually saw both parties held accountable for their roles in these horrific crimes.